Okay, Vinita, can you hear me? Hello, Vinita. Can you hear me? Hello, Sandeep. Can you hear me? Okay, now let me try this again. Can you hear? Can you hear anything?
I can hear.
You can hear this lady talking?
No, lady, I can't hear. I can hear you. I mean, I can't hear anybody else but you.
There is a audio here which I'm trying to play.
I can only tell you that I recognize this lady in the picture.
Now, can you hear anyone?
No.
No?
Nothing I can hear. No.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do to get the audio playing.
No, I am. I have no idea how this works. There is something which is there something to do with connect audio? No? Because there is something called disconnect audio, so there must be connect audio also, no? Or there's something meeting settings if you see there.
Hello, Kumar. How are you?
Hi there.
I'm having difficulty getting the audio to work that is embedded in the slide. Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. One sec. I think I've joined twice. Let me get rid of one of them. I think I'm in two places.
Okay, now you can see the slides, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear this? Oh?
Yeah.
Yanks is going to call you.
Can you hear the song, birthday song?
No.
Hi, Srinivas. Hello. Hello. Hi, Srinivas. Hello. Hello. You can see the slides. But you cannot hear the audio.
You put on the audio first.
Hello, Srinivas. Yes, that audio nobody can hear. I don't know what. Where is that share the sound option?
Go to the top on the right hand side, there will be some dots or something to drop down. Is it there?
No. Well, at the bottom there might be. Let me see.
Yeah, because they keep changing these versions. That's another problem.
Uh, okay, hang on. Yeah, there are some dots more. Yes.
Yeah, more. So there you see there's the option of the.
Pause recording, stop recording, share sound.
Yeah,
Sure.
share sound.
Okay, I did share sound. Now let me try again.
Yeah, now you try again, and I will be holding the phone. You just try it.
Hello and welcome to this very special edition of
Got
On
it.
Camera.
आ
For
गया.
all you rap lovers,
आ गया.
cast struggle and
आ गया,
rap
आ गया.
music might be a very odd combination.
You can
With a
hear
three,
it.
I can
recently
hear
met
it.
with a Dalit
Excellent.
rapper from
Okay.
JNU who's
Very
Yes,
good.
yes.
challenging age-old caste hierarchies
Very
and
good.
norms with his
Thank
subversive
you.
music style. Why don't
Yeah.
we catch a glimpse of his work?
Good. Testing
Okay.
over.
Good. I'm glad you can hear
Very
what
clearly.
I was trying to share. Thank you. I think it had to do with sharing sound somehow.
So you did it from the settings?
Yeah,
Somewhere.
what you do is you go inside Zoom and there are 3 dots in the menu. So you go to those 3 dots that say more, and then within that there is a link called share sound. So I clicked on that link and then the sound got shared. I don't know, yesterday when I tried it with Srinivas, everything worked fine. Today we had to do this adjustment.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Thank you.
Very good.
So I had to give Shankar a wake-up call because he had to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. He is wide awake.
Yeah.
And the Australians, I hope, are wide awake too at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. You know, we were attending a Bhajan program.
Uh-huh.
The Ashta, what was it?
Hello, Rama, how are you?
Hey,
Good.
Rama.
Hi, everyone. Hi,
Hello.
everyone. Hi, Vinita.
Hi.
So you got to talk to Mayank? You sent him a message?
Nahi, bhai. I'll send it to him today a little later. I saw that message.
Oh, let
We've
him
got a
contact
visitor.
you. Yeah. Why are you contact? Let him contact you.
Have you given him my contact details,
Yeah,
Sandeep?
I've given him. Yeah.
Okay, ठीक है. First
Yeah.
class. So ठीक है. देखते हैं. Yeah. Yeah. I think all of a sudden all these things are coming into fore. 4 years back, there was an inter-IM session at Google headquarters. Actually, this was in 2019, and I'd gone there for the inter-IM thing. There's nobody from our batch, but it's very interesting. 2018 or whatever, the IMs are there. So that's where I first talked about what we were doing and how, and nobody understood. It's a little different now.
You were an early mover, Rama.
Totally. Early mover and evangelist, both. Let me see if I can just change my background so it doesn't look so official. Just that goes in.
I see that Srinivas is still logged in.
Is he?
Yeah, but the place is noisy, so I'm on mute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You stay there. No?
Yeah, as long as possible.
Where are you, Yanks?
I'm in the airport, Rama, going to Hyderabad.
Oh, okay,
and
okay.
Remembering you.
Yeah, that was a very nice trip. When I lost my OCI card, the guy nearly didn't let me go through at Hyderabad airport. When I was there in December. Ugh, God. All scary times.
Did you find your card? Did you find your card?
Yeah, found it. The guys were very wonderful. I wrote a note. Delhi airport, they found it. It went into lost and found, and they did it so efficiently. It was very impressive. Very
These
impressive.
guys are really good. Huh? This is the second case I've heard. When Seema was traveling to Mumbai, it was an early morning flight,
Yeah.
and she inadvertently left her laptop at the security check. When she
Acha.
arrived in Paris, she realized.
Oh
So
God.
next morning, she got in touch with the lost and found, and it
Yeah.
was amazing. Within 5 minutes, this guy at the other end of the line says, "Tell me your name, tell me what kind of laptop," and then he says, "I have it. You tell me who to give it to." And it was amazing that
Amazing. Wow.
they were able to track it down so efficiently.
Yeah. I was also so impressed. And with an OCI card, it's a big hassle to kind of get it reinstated. It's a real.
Yeah,
I've already
absolutely.
gone through that process once, and
Mhm.
and so I was very happy when the
That's
guys
great.
confirmed it.
Really good.
And
To
the
know
funny
that-
thing was at Hyderabad airport, I was showing them the US passport card. I carry that as a backup, because when I'm traveling within India, I don't carry my passport just in case I lose it.
Mhm.
And the US passport card is very clear. It shows everything. The guy refused to accept it. Why? Because the document that has to be there is a US passport, not a passport card.
I see. Yeah,
Lesson learned.
it's very confusing. We were my son and I were at Rome airport, and we had already got late for the flight. And those were the days when PIO had just been replaced by OCI. And I showed my OCI card, and this lady looks at her computer terminal and says, "I can see PIO here, but I don't know what OCI is." And I was in a panic because she just wouldn't budge. And
Right.
luckily, her supervisor walked by.
Ah.
The moment he heard OCI, he said, "That's better than PIO. Let him go."
Yeah, it's very interesting situations. That's all I can
Yeah,
say.
I mean, it's training. I mean, if the supervisor knew that, this person at the counter should have known.
No,
that-
not really, Milind. What they go by is the computer system. The computer system would
Correct.
not have been updated.
Right.
So, and then that junior person would not have the authority to override, whereas
True.
the supervisor has the right to override. So, just an SOP that they have in place, which makes sense.
Correct.
Just that in typical computer systems worldwide, they
Yeah.
always lag in terms of overrides and structures, etc.
Very true. Very true.
So that's all there is to it. I'll just go on mute. I've got to do a quick call to my mother-in-law while I.
Okay. Sure. Hello, Pushpita, can you hear us? Ajay, Nidhi,
Good evening. Almost coming up to good morning here.
I know. You guys are great. Staying up at 11 in the night, past midnight.
What time is the Wimbledon starting today, ladies?
About now, I think
Hmm.
men's is over.
Men's is over? What is over?
I mean, men's semi-final is over.
Semi-final.
Final is tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, who's the guess for Wimbledon champ?
The women's or the
Kyrgios.
men?
Djokovic.
Djokovic. Okay. Let's wait and
Kyrgios.
see. Hello, Anjali. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Good to see all of you. In spite of the change time.
Ishan is also here. I thought it was tomorrow, but
There's a friend of mine who might join. He thought it was yesterday. And I suddenly see him on the Zoom session at 9 o'clock yesterday morning.
Anjali, are you in Boston or Dalhousie?
Hi guys.
Hello, welcome. How are you?
Hello. Hi, hi.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Good to see you all.
Hello, Suresh.
Hello. Good morning. Evening.
Hey, Milind.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Time is it for you guys?
It's 9 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. Pushpita.
Oh, okay. That's not too bad.
Yeah, well, after having gone through a year of midnight book club, we are at a better time. And thanks for sharing that burden with us now.
I didn't realize you guys were into midnight earlier. Yeah, I guess so.
What is
Well
your
past
time,
midnight.
Monty?
Usually
We
1
are at
a.m.
11 p.m.
Oh, we are getting a bit of relief. We were having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yes.
For a 6:37 session. Now it's 5 in the evening, which is nice.
Yeah.
You know, now Shankar has taken up that role. I had to wake him up this morning at 5:30.
So when are we being joined by Dr. Narendra Jadhav?
I hope in about a minute or two.
Oh,
Okay. He's on, I think.
Oh, there. I see. He
yes,
has
I
joined.
see his iPad.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, Dr. Jadhav. Can you hear us?
मैं उनका सेक्रेटरी बोल रहा हूँ सर। आंसर आप सबका, लेकिन मेरी आ रही है आपके पास आवाज?
हाँ, आ रही है।
ओके, और कैमरा मुझे दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है एक्चुअली, स्क्रीन नहीं दिखाई दे रही है।
Auntie, very happy birthday.
वेबकैम ऑन करिए तो आपको दिखाई देगा।
Narendra's iPad.
I think somebody is helping him set up the system.
Good afternoon, guys. Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Anu, seeing you after a long time.
Who are you seeing after a long time, Gautam?
Anu. I haven't seen her in a long time.
I thought Anu was there last time.
Yeah, she was there last
She was
time.
there last time because
My
our aunt was
apologies.
speaking. No,
That's
but
right.
Oh,
you are
yes.
seeing after. But you are seeing after
Rama,
last time.
Rama, I have to
Yes.
correct you, not because my aunt was speaking. I missed only one session.
You were there. I remember now.
Just a sec.
My words.
Hello.
My words were poorly phrased. Sorry, Anu.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Jadhav has just joined us.
Hello.
Him.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Jadhav.
Hello, everybody.
Have you?
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Jadhav.
Yeah, hello. I can't see my face there on the screen. I can see the
Change the settings. Change this. Go to the settings.
We can
Your
see
camera.
We can see you, Dr. Yadav.
We can see you.
We can see
Fair
you.
enough. Fair enough.
Okay.
But
So
you might just want to shift your camera so that we can see your face. It's being cut off right now.
You're too close, actually. He's too close.
There you go.
No, but I
better.
can't see myself even in far.
Dr. Jadhav, if you go to the view
No.
on your iPad, there's a little icon which says view in the right-hand side. If you click on view, you will get gallery, speaker, and full
The
screen.
presentation.
Yeah. So if you press on that, you will be, if you put full screen, gallery, and then full screen, you will see yourself.
If that's what you want.
Good question.
okay, I see that more
My,
than 50 of us are here.
Somebody's asking me to do that.
So we can get going.
I think we can get going.
Okay.
Are you able to see me and hear me?
Yes.
properly?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to this very special edition of On Camera. For all your rap lovers, caste struggle and rap music might be a very odd combination. But the print recently met with a Dalit rapper from JNU who's challenging age-old caste hierarchies and norms with his subversive music style. Why don't you catch a glimpse of his work?
Hey, I'm a young Dalit guy with the cap.
we're still learning to rap. I'm gonna tell you the stories of our lives, every single thing I've been through in your class, better strive. As long as I'm alive, when I rap, I don't subscribe to your critical merit, aesthetics, musical understanding. To express my people's view is my only longing. Because you have stripped us of our human belonging. Let me tell you what you have done. The pain is still not gone. You made me question my parents, my birth, my human existence, my appearance, my food, my clothes, my smell, etiquette, mannerism. I could never find no logic, no human reason. Season after season, in all of life's motion. Season after season, in all of life's motion, you did constant vilification. I saw my parents' tears with cast humiliation. I saw my parents' tears with cast humiliation. When my mother cooked food, you never ate. With my mother's cooked food, you never ate. I thought maybe my mother doesn't cook so good. To the upper class house, we have been always so outside. To the upper class house, we have been always outside. I still keep wondering what lies inside. I used to cry till my tears dry. I used to cry till my tears dry. But I want to ask, why? Us, why? But now, I say Jai Bhim because I'm from the Ambedkar's blue team. I say Jai Bhim because I'm from Ambedkar's blue team. Caste annihilation is in my aspiration and dream.
Wow.
Now the celebration for Suresh, Sangeeta, Pushpita and Ishan on their birthdays in this month.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, everyone.
Monty's
So,
already had hers. Others will follow.
Yes.
Happy birthday, guys.
Happy birthday.
Pushpita, as the reader for the month for September, had recommended 3 very good books. New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and The Difficulty of Being Good by Gurcharan Das. And as you can see, almost 50% of the vote went to The Difficulty of Being Good by Gurcharan Das. So we will be reading this book in August in preparation for our September meeting. So that's a good outcome.
Good choice.
And now we get to our segment where I can welcome Dr. Narendra Zadhav. I'm really glad that as the author of Untouchables, he's with us as our guest speaker. You all have already read his bio sketch and become familiar with his prolific writings and several distinctions and recognitions. Just to highlight a few achievements, he just completed his 6-year Rajya Sabha term in April this year. He was chief economist at the Reserve Bank, member of the Planning Commission, and also on deputation at the International Monetary Fund. Received his PhD in economics from Indiana University and also has served as Vice Chancellor of Savitribai Phule Pune University. So, let me say a few words to formally introduce Dr. Zadhav. To introduce him as our esteemed guest, I've chosen a quote from Chanakya's Niti Shastra. Vidvatvancha nupatvancha naiva tulyam kadachana swadeshe pujyate raja vidvan sarvatra pujyate. The meaning of the above shlok or verse is very simple. Scholarship and kingship can never be compared or treated on par with each other. A king is revered and valued in his own country if he is good, while the scholar is valued and revered everywhere on this earth. Dr. Narendra Zadhav is indeed such a scholar. He is an economist, educationist, academic, administrator, and the best-selling author of more than 40 books in Marathi, Hindi, and English. One of these books, now published in no less than 225 editions, Untouchables is what we are discussing today. And we all should be rightly feeling honored and humbled that Dr. Zadav is among us this day to talk about his book. Dr. Zadav, as you can tell, has pursued a career and a life in search of excellence. This idea of in search of excellence was expressed very well by him in an earlier TV interview on his book, where he said, "My book stands out because it has no bitterness. In fact, it has a positive message. If you have a vision about the future, if you are willing to work hard and have a burning desire to get your goals fulfilled, you can break through all social and cultural barriers imposed by caste, creed, religion, and region." The full title of the book captures these sentiments powerfully as he looks across generations to take us through his family's triumphant journey out of the caste system in modern India. But let me stop here and allow him time to tell us more about his book and lessons we can take away from his illustrious career and life. Welcome, Dr. Zadav, and it's all yours. We are waiting to listen to you. Can you hear us, Dr. Zadav?
No.
I think Dr. Jadhav needs to unmute himself.
Yeah, he needs to
He's on
unmute.
mute. He's on mute.
Dr.
I will
Zadav?
unmute. Right. Now it is okay?
Yes.
Can you hear
yes.
me now?
We can now
we can hear you.
All right. Okay, I'll go again. Thank you very much, friends, for organizing this very interesting and exciting get together on web. First of all, happy birthday to all the friends who are celebrating their birthday during this month. The narrative said that 225 editions of Untouchables. No, that is technically incorrect. In Marathi alone, it has got 225 editions. If you look at this book, Untouchable, has been published, translated into 15 different languages, mostly Indian languages, and outside India, English, French. English is almost an Indian language, but French, Spanish, and then Thai, and above all, Korean. In fact, in Korea, it has sold more than 300,000 copies. So, total number of copies sold is somewhere around 700,000. So that's a huge number. The 225 editions that you're talking about, that is only in Marathi, the original Marathi. And that makes this book as the largest selling book in the history of Marathi literature. But in the vernacular market, the markets are very small. So 1,000 copies is considered one edition, unlike abroad where editions can be much larger. So instead of talking about the number of editions, I think one should talk about the number of copies, and total is more than 700,000. I can, it is better that you ask me specific questions so that I will answer them, because there's so much that I can say. I want to say something that you want to know. Therefore, let's start with the questions right away. You ask questions and I will answer.
Dr. Zadav, let me start out by asking you to share with us how exactly this idea of the book was born, and how did you develop this book right from the outset?
Right. Very good. This book has a very, very interesting origin. you know, the protagonist of this book is my father. And what happened was we have the big family. My father and mother both never went to school. I'm a first generation learner. My father, all his life, worked as a ordinary worker in the railways. But he was a brilliant man. Now, when he retired in 1969, we are 4 brothers and 2 sisters, so big family those days, and I'm the youngest one, 6th one. So by the time he retired, I had just finished my high school and I was entering college. This is 1969. And at that time, he retired from his job. Now, he could barely read the headlines, not much, headlines of the newspaper. So he didn't know what to do with his time. He was very strong and sturdy. So he started fixing things around the house. And so much so that even the things which were functioning perfectly well, they also could not escape his repairs. Now, that became a nuisance to everybody, because in the afternoon, he would start banging on the walls and, you know, fixing things around the house. Now, that became a nuisance, but nobody could tell him, because that generation, he was, to give example of a Rishi, he was a Jamadagni. Most fathers were Jamadagni, avatars of Jamadagni at that time, in that generation. So nobody could tell him. Because I was the youngest, I could take the liberty, and I came out with gem of an idea. It was a very simple idea. I told him that you keep telling us stories, why don't you write them down? He asked me, who the hell is going to be reading that? I said, I gave him a pep talk that this would be very useful for the next generation. It will be a guiding light for the next generation. One knows that that is not necessarily true, but to persuade him, to goad him to write, I came up with this idea and I pushed him, and I gave him all the necessary things and pushed him to write. After repeated, after insistence, he finally started writing. When he started writing, amazing thing happened. He discovered that he was a born writer. And he would write from morning till evening, every day. No holiday, nothing. This is a piece of paper. He would write this corner, no margin, no, and slowly, in a very good handwriting, he wrote all that he remembered. And he kept writing for 10 years, remember. And that was, I was so young and so mature, I must say, that I did not care to read. I thought that I solved the major problem by directing his attention to something that was less noisy and creating peace at home. So I patted myself on the back, but did not read it.
I think we've lost connection with you, Dr. Jadhav. Can you hear us? You might want to try logging in again. Let me try calling him.
Is he in Bombay?
He's in Bombay.
Back but is on mute.
Dr. Yadav, you're muted.
Yeah. I have unmuted. it keeps going off and on, but it comes back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. All right. So, 1999, when he died, certainly those notes
Doctor, you might want to switch off your
became
video.
very
Just
important
use the
to
audio.
me.
Just use the audio.
They had emotional,
Dr.
they had a lot
Jadhav,
of
you might
emotional
want
value.
to try switching off the video and just try the audio, if that's possible.
Yanks, can you stop the screen share? That will also help probably.
Okay.
I have stopped video. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. No. You might want to try connecting again. We
I
cannot
think
hear
there's
you.
feedback, probably feedback because there's more than one device in the room or something that's active.
This is a problem we cannot solve from our end.
I mean, if you can enable the Zoom dial-in connection and we can call him on the phone, that might help.
Okay, let me call him
He's
on the
just switched
phone.
off his iPad. He's just switched off his iPad, so we'll be looking at another device. It's just in Narendra's iPad left. So let's see.
Okay. Let me try calling him.
Yeah, I think we should wait for him to connect back and see if that solves. Otherwise, do the dial-up.
Again, it was disconnected. Now
go.
I can see my picture also.
Okay.
Should I put my video also off?
No, sir, you're fine now.
You're fine now. You're
All
fine.
right.
Go ahead.
So in 1989, after his death, suddenly those books had a big emotional value. And one of those evenings, I looked for those. I turned the house upside down looking for those old notebooks. My mother finally came out and she gave me those notebooks. She could not read anything out of it. So something that was done by her husband was very important to her. So she had wrapped it up and carefully tucked it away. So she gave it to me one of those evenings, I remember in 1991. And I started reading. And when I started reading, I will not hesitate to tell you that all night I read. And I was weeping all through the night. I thought that there was a lot of social treasure in that. And I was convinced that I should try to get a book out of it. So, but then I thought that my liking my father's writing is most natural. Let somebody else certify that this had the literary value. So next day morning, I went to the great writer, Mulk Raj Anand, with whom I had some TV shows at that time. Mulk Raj Anand he died at the age of 100. And so I went to him and I showed him my notebook. I chose him because he was a man who would be ruthless in giving his comments. And I wanted that kind of comment. So I went to him with one notebook and made a random translation. And he read that. He immediately grabbed my hand and he said, Dr. Jadhav, forget about your economics. This is your destiny. You must get a book out of this. It would be a great social document. When he certified that, I got to work. And then I realized that the book had many problems. It had 10 notebooks, but there was a lot of repetition. Because he remembered, he wrote as he remembered. So there was a lot of repetition and there were 10 books. So, and there were no chapters, no margin, nothing. So all that had to be done. And I did that. I got rid of the repetition. I put that in proper chapters and got the whole thing timed. And then it struck me what a mistake I had made. My father had stopped writing in 1948 about his story. So he was long on his young age. And up to 1948, he wrote. And after 1948, he stopped writing because he was very tired. His eyes were giving him trouble. And there was nobody to insist. So he gave up. Every day that I could not read those in time to pursue ways. Nevertheless, I did that job. So what I did was, then I sat down with my mother and the surviving relatives and all my brothers and all my sisters and completed that book. So originally the book came, the central part of the book is my mother's own write-up. Beginning is 2 essays written by me about my father. And then at the end, third part, I have written professional evolution of all of us, the brothers, the next generation. That is why Amcha Baap and Ami, our father and I. And in that form, the book was to be released. The book is a very interesting story. Shall I get on to that or shall I?
Sorry.
Hello.
Your voice
Can
was
you hear
getting
me?
cut off. Yeah. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
No, basically,
I said that. Yeah, that the book part. Then my own father's
The audio is terrible.
No, we cannot hear
Can't hear a
you.
word. Cannot make out what he said.
And there are biographies of my brothers.
No. Dr. Zadhav, we cannot
Can you
hear
hear
you.
me?
You might want to try logging in again.
Or maybe he could switch off his video.
Yeah, when he comes back,
Switch off the video completely.
it could be a bandwidth problem. I think I can see the iPad. Is that his? I don't see him anymore.
Hello, I'm back again.
Oh, okay.
So that is how the book was. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
but you could put off your video. It'll help, I think.
Yeah, Dr.
I should put
Sadhav,
off the video. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
I will stop video, keep unmuted.
Yes. Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
All right.
That's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
So that book father's writing in Marathi. The first part was my essays on my father, and then the third part, my interviews of them. That's how the book was originally made, and that book made a history right at the beginning because the book sold the entire first edition, however small that is, 1,000 copies. On the day, it became the first book in the history of Marathi literature to sell the entire edition on day one. How did that happen? That is also a very interesting story. You know, when I was writing the book, in the final days of writing the book, I used to be in one of the social gatherings. I talked about this book to some friends, and one of them included a person who was the director of All India Radio. He persuaded me to read.
No, we've lost your voice again. We cannot hear you anymore after the All India Radio reference. When he comes back, I know Sandeep and Nidhi had questions for him. So maybe one of you should ask him one of your questions.
Milind, do you have his number? Do you have a phone number for him?
Yeah, I can call him on WhatsApp.
I can. Yeah, I'm back again. It keeps going in and out.
Okay. I think a couple of my friends have questions for you.
Yeah, please.
It's okay if they can ask you questions.
Of course, please.
Yeah.
I'll write them down.
Okay. Nidhi or Sandeep, you want to go ahead?
Chacha, you can go first. Are you here?
I can see Sandeep is there, or anyone else if they are not ready.
I'll ask.
Yeah,
Amos.
Go ahead.
So, Dr. Jadhav, when I was reading the book, you know, one of the central questions that struck me was that why were people so reluctant to convert from Hinduism to Buddhism, as Dr. Ambedkar had suggested? Because honestly, if you look at Hinduism as a religion, it's like 15% or less of the group basically tells the 85% what to do and kind of lords it over them. You know, they are close to 30% Dalits and tribal people. There are 40% backward caste people. And of the balance, you know, if you say half are women who have also been considered inferior traditionally and not worthy of, you know, religious rites and rituals, that adds up to 85% of the Hindu population. So, you know, why would anyone want to continue to be a Hindu?
Okay. Let me explain. I do not agree that people were reluctant to convert to Buddhism. Dr. Ambedkar made announcement about conversion 21 years before his death in 1935. But the actual conversion took place only 50 days before his demise, before Mahaparinirvan. For 6th of December 1956, he died, and the great conversion took place on 14th of October 1956. Now, you tell me one example from the world history where mass conversion, 7.5 or 750,000 people give up their religion, accept a new religion on the word of one person without any monetary incentive or without any pressure of gun. I think this conversion is the unique event in the history because this is the first mass conversion which took place without any force, without any promise of money. And in one day, nearly 7.5 lakh people, that is 3/4 of a million people, converted themselves into Buddhism. Had Dr. Ambedkar survived longer, I would have imagined that that message would have spread and many more people would have. You'll be surprised that even today, in various parts of the country, conversions are taking place in a big way, inspired originally by Dr. Ambedkar. And that is not from Dalits alone, from many other castes as well. So the process, so I would not accept this statement that people were reluctant to change their religion. It is just the timing and that Dr. Ambedkar did not survive too long. That's why. There is no parallel to this in the world history. Please do show me if you have. Turn to another question.
Yeah, Sandeep, you want to ask a question?
You're on mute, Sandeep. Chacha.
You're on mute.
On mute, yeah. So I have actually a long list of questions, Dr. Yadav.
All right.
I'll ask you one by one.
Right.
My first, and these are observations and queries both. Every society in the world has historically practiced segregation and discrimination in some form or the other. The one in India, based on Manusmriti, has been the least cruel and hence the most enduring. What are your views?
Okay, I accept. I completely, sorry, I think this is a very, very good question. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Okay, all right. I have stopped video. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I got the question. This is a very, very good question. And I completely disagree with your observation and the statement that the segregation based on Manusmriti was the least cruel and most enduring. It was most enduring, yes, but least cruel, you must be joking. Or you must be out of your mind to say that. Because nowhere in the world the segregation has been so cruel as it has been under Manusmriti. Even the slavery, Dr. Ambedkar in one of his pieces has compared slavery, the Roman slavery, American problem of racial problem, and compared that Indian situation. When the world, you just tell me, the segregation, it was not only physical segregation like blacks in America. Where in the world such a large population was denied the opportunity of taking any education? Where in the world these people were, can you imagine, these people could not go to school, they could not learn, and they all had to do the work assigned by their caste, which was onerous. And most importantly, even socially, they had to carry in their neck, carry a earthen pot so that their spit does not pollute the ground. They had to carry a broom on their waist so that their shadow was also sacrilege and they would be cleaning the ground as they walk. Where in the world this kind of thing has happened? Also, please also note that those who were slaves, people took care of the slaves because that was their capital. So they were given proper food. Otherwise, their capital would be lost. And slaves were not once a slave, always a slave. Slave could always pay back to the owner and become free. There is no such thing in the untouchability. Once you are untouchable by birth, you remain untouchable, and you stay outside the village and do the menial task irrespective of the time that you have. I was talking about my father. My father always worked all his life. He worked for railways as a coolie or as a class 4 employee. I can tell you, if my father had an opportunity, he would have got 2 PhDs instead of 1. I have only 1 PhD from USA. He would have got 2 PhDs. Just imagine how many geniuses might have been born among this strata of society who could not contribute anything to the nation, but died performing menial tasks. So the damage was not only for the families, the damage was for the nation as a whole. So it was most enduring, yes, but it was least cruel. I'm sorry. That is something which is the least of the truth. Most enduring, let me say this. I agree it has been most enduring because This is the most cleverly articulated segregation or discrimination. It is so beautifully done. Please understand, even the theory of karma that human beings, the souls goes through 8.4 million different lives and so on. So everybody was, why there was no revolt? Because everybody was told that whatever you have done in your past life, you are carrying excreta, human excreta on your head now because of something bad that you have done in the past. Keep doing that beautifully. And in the next birth, you can carry flowers on your head. This is nothing but bullshit. And this bullshit was sold to them for ages. And they were not allowed to take any education. So it was most enduring because it was very, I have gone on record earlier, caste system is the most brilliantly conceived and administered scam in the history of the world. I'll repeat that. Caste system is the most brilliantly conceived and most effectively implemented scam in the history of the world. No wonder it has been most enduring.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, sure.
In India, there were many reformists with egalitarian views. We had the Mahapurush Srimanta Shankara Dev in Assam. We had Guru Nanak Dev in Punjab.
Right.
We had Basava in Karnataka.
Right.
We had Mirabai in Rajasthan.
Right.
We had Ramaswamy Naikar in Tamil Nadu.
Right.
We had Raja Ram Mohan Roy in Bengal, and we had Jyotiba Phule in Maharashtra, to just name a few. Despite their popularity, the traditional segregation and discrimination practices against backward classes was not taken up for reform. Is this statement correct?
I didn't get the last line of your question.
So despite the popularity of despite their popularity.
No, I got that. Yeah. What was the final point? Final question.
Is this statement correct? That nothing was done about the reform in the discrimination practices against backward classes?
Yeah. Very good question again. Listen, all these people were great people and they contributed in big way. But you do please, for God's sake, don't put Jyotiba Phule in all the others. Jyotiba Phule was a reformer who made a lot of difference because he introduced education for women and education for the masses. This is a huge difference. I do not mean any disrespect for others. All of them have done good work, but Mahatma Phule stands out, and no wonder Dr. Ambedkar calls him as one of his gurus. That is why. Because he introduced education to the classes, from classes to the masses. Second point that, all the saints in India, they were very popular. You have taken many names and they're absolutely true. They have, but why they have not succeeded in stopping the discretionary or discriminatory practices? That is because all the saints of the Bhakti cult, they said that we are all equal before God. Now, look at the tricky statement that we are all human beings are equal before God. But in day-to-day life, they never questioned the caste system. They only said that the blessings of the God are for all. But they never brought that into the day-to-day life. So this is a statement which is very good and understandable and appreciated by everybody, that before the God, we are all equal. But go to your day-to-day life, you are not equal. That was the corollary of the statement. That is why they were very popular, but it did not make any difference in terms of bringing about a real reform.
Was that also basically Gandhiji's talk, and was that the reason why he and Ambedkar never got along?
Well, this is a very tricky question. Let me tell you something. Gandhiji and Dr. Ambedkar, their relationship is, I have written a book. I'm still not publishing it because it would be a little explosive. Gandhiji was the champion of the caste system. Yeah. Gandhiji was the champion of the Varnashram Dharma. Gandhiji was the he did not want, see, Gandhiji was one person who could have destroyed the caste system had he taken it up, but he did not. He was also, as Dr. Ambedkar said, he was a half Mahatma and half politician. Gandhiji was a politician and a very astute one, and Gandhiji never wanted to eradicate the caste system. If he wanted to, he could have done that. But he did not do that. There was a big debate between Gandhiji and Ambedkar, several debates, but one debate which is very relevant to your question, I would like to reproduce. You see, in 1936, Dr. Ambedkar wrote a book about annihilation of caste. And that was based on the talk that he was supposed to give in Lahore. And that never happened because he had said that if you want to destroy the caste system, you have to put explosives to the Dharma Grantha. All the sacred books, you should put explosive on them. Otherwise, the caste system will not go, because caste system has got religious sanctity. So first you have to destroy the religious sanctity. Gandhiji was very critical. He was reacted very badly. And Gandhiji too, in his magazine, Mother in the Young India, he wrote that there is a discrimination, there is a division in the society everywhere, and division of labor is a time-honored principle of economics. So distinction between Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, this is required for social stability. This is the argument that Gandhiji made. The counter argument of Dr. Ambedkar was this: what we have is not the division of labor, but superimposed on division of labor is division of laborers. A son of a Brahmin, no matter how much useless he was, he would always have the right to preach. Whereas, son of an untouchable, no matter how brilliant he was always confined to the menial tasks, including carrying the human excreta on his head. So, it is not the division of labor, it is superimposed on division of labor, is division of laborers, which is very unnatural. Division of labor is natural, but division of laborers is unnatural because it is based on the accident of birth. And there Gandhiji had no counter argument to make. I will tell you something really shocking. Do you know, people find it impossible to believe. Do you know that Gandhiji is actually on record that for those whom we used to call bhangis, those who carry human excreta on their head, he said that, I don't mind people from this community to get education, to become doctor, engineer, whatever they want to pursue, they are free to pursue. Yes, but when it comes to work, they must continue to do this work. Can you believe Mahatma Gandhi saying this? It is on record, I can show you that.
But Dr. Jadhav, I just wanted to clarify something. I was not referring to the size of the conversions that occurred under Dr. Ambedkar. They were huge, as you rightly said. I was only asking why more conversions didn't occur. I would have thought that many more people would have left Hinduism. That is what I was trying to
Yeah,
understand.
no, my answer to that was that it happened toward the end of his life. Had Dr. Ambedkar survived a little longer, you would have seen much larger, you would have seen, had Dr. Ambedkar survived a little longer, you would have seen the change.
But do you think that it would have extended into other groups in Hindu society, or would it have stayed more?
I have no doubt about it. It would have.
Yanks, can you go on mute?
There is some cross connection.
Someone has to mute, please.
Yanks, I think Yanks needs to go on mute. Yeah, thank you.
You know what I'm saying is that, yes, I am convinced that it would have spread and it would have spread to all other communities as well. But that did not happen because Dr. Ambedkar died. However,
I think Dr. Jadhav,
yeah,
the question I think Nidhi is trying to, and I would agree with her, is that why was there not general disillusionment? Why did Dr. Ambedkar started the process? But given the nature of the abuse, and given the nature of the huge discrimination, why was it not a natural desire to get away from this all and get into Buddhism rather than wait for the lead to be given by one individual? I think that's the question.
Good question. Yes. I will answer that. That is simply because it was given a religious sanctity. It was given religious sanctity, and when it is given by, there is a statement attributed to Lord Krishna that Chaturvarnya Maya Krutam or something like that, that I created Chaturvarnya. So when something is created by God, who are we to challenge it? That is what makes it very brilliant.
I agree about a brilliant point. Yeah.
So Dr. Yadav, I had one question. This was about universal suffrage, giving the right for adult franchise.
Right.
That singularly has done more good for the backward classes than the reservation which is there. What do you feel?
Right. Absolutely. And who talked about universal suffrage first time in our country?
Dr. Ambedkar.
And which year? Which year was that? Do you know that?
Yeah, please. Although I know the answer, but I don't remember it.
No, this is very, very important. In 1919, when he was barely 30 years old, there was a commission that visited for reforms of the constitutional reforms. And testifying before them, Dr. Ambedkar made out a case for universal suffrage. That is 1 year before it happened in United States. Imagine that. So he was so much ahead of time. So universal, he has been consistently saying that, but he was the first one to say that. Because even when the British started introducing democracy or autonomy in parts, they were confined to certain wealthy classes with some educational limitation and so on. It was not adult suffrage. First time the adult suffrage demand was made by Dr. Ambedkar when it was not there even in United States. Now this is very, very important. Yeah.
So having done that, having given universal suffrage, why was it necessary to also have reservation? And don't you think that reservation is now doing more harm to the cause of the backward classes?
See, these two things are not mutually exclusive. These two are complementary to each other. Reservations are needed not because, this is very important statement that I'm making. Reservations are needed because of the innate inability of our system to be just and fair. If our system were just and fair, then there is no need for reservation. So,
but then reservation is becoming an obstacle to the full integration of this civil society. That is becoming
Our
important.
society was never integrated in the first place. These people were kept outside the villages. What are you talking about? That reservation has strengthened the caste
Chacha,
system.
I think Hebar and Ramarao have another question. Maybe we can go in a different direction.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Rama. Rama, you are on mute, I think.
Yeah. I just wanted to unmute. Rather than going to some of these very socially fascinating questions, my question is simpler.
Yeah.
And
I don't
understand.
mind those explosive questions, and I'm answering them.
No, we love it. I really love it.
Okay.
My question relates to your book and your selection of
All right.
people to tell the story. I recognize that this was based on your father. My question relates to, you had a large family and you had two sisters and brothers, and you did bring a postscript with your daughter from Johns Hopkins. So why is their story not being told in the whole format of what I think is an outstanding book?
Beautiful question. Listen, what happened? My book has been organically growing. It's very, very strange. Initially, I received thousands of letters, of course. Those days, letters were there, emails were not there. And many people wrote to me saying that you write about your father, you write about your brothers, you write about yourself, but you don't write about your mother. So I said, look at the name of the book, Our Father and Us. It is not our father, mother, and us. They said, you put her in us. And in fact, one social organization of women gave me an ultimatum that if I don't write about my mother, they would publicly protest and put black on my face and all that. It was out of love. It was not the real movement kind. But then I took lesson from that, and I immediately wrote a piece on my mother, which was added in the second edition. And so it went on adding things. I wrote about my sisters-in-law in the later versions. So it went on organically increasing. My Marathi book, for your information, does not have anything from my daughter Apurva. That came in the English version, because the English version is not a mere translation. I wrote it myself. And I wrote it while I was working in Washington, D.C. I was representing India at the International Monetary Fund. And that is where, in those 4 years, I wrote the English version. I completely rewrote. The English format is very different from the Marathi format because, the audience was different, or viewership was different. In India, Ambedkar, people know about Ambedkar. They know about the caste system. Whereas about the American audience or European audience, they don't know the detailed nuances of that. So it had to be rewritten. So many things which are there in Untouchable are not there in Marathi book and so on. But even Marathi book has gone through an evolution. It went on adding things on public demand, literally on public demand. And I'll tell you something very interesting. There are 2 lessons from my Marathi book, which were for 20 years, they were part of the curricula at the 8th grade and at the 12th grade. And it has really seen 3 generations of readers. And I'm very happy and proud to say that.
Can I demand another quick question and then I'll...
What about Hebar?
Raja.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Dr. Jadhav, truly an honor to be speaking with you today. Amazing book and so much to learn and try to understand, from it. But my question has to do with what your daughter Apurva wrote. And by the way, she's very eloquent and really refreshing to hear her perspective. And she wrote, my generation, however, is free from all this. And I'm so glad that she feels that way. And I think it's a testament to how you and your wife have brought her up and the environment in which you brought her up. But my question to you is whether everyone in her generation feels the same way, especially in the context of the US. And I particularly want to refer to a recent incident that happened at Google where a Dalit rights activist, Tanmozi, Sundar Rajan from Equality Labs was supposed to give a talk, and that talk was canceled in the last minute because of some very powerful forces within Google, who ended up, protesting and writing against having that talk take place, and cast it as, a presentation by someone who was representing anti-Hindu sentiments. And so, the talk was actually canceled. My daughter, in fact, works for Google. She was very upset, when she saw that this talk was canceled. And that's how I first came to know about it, but it's in the media, quite a bit. So I wanted to get your perspective on whether you feel, this kind of thing is still continuing to happen, to the extent and, in these kinds of organizations, and what, if anything, can be done.
Yeah. Very good question. Very quickly, I must say something about my daughter. When she wrote that, she was a very small little girl. She is now PhD in public health from University of Pennsylvania, and she works from USAID. And she is married to a Turkish economist, and she has twin kids, boy and a girl. And she is doing extremely well. And she continues to have that kind of spirit. About others in America, I think there is a large young section of young people who are coming out and they are asserting for their rights. The moment, the incident that you recalled about cancellation of lecture by a Dalit rights activist, this is bound to happen because, see, this is my perception. Those who have gone from India to US in the 60s or in 70s or in 80s, they are all frozen in their time as far as Indian system is concerned. There they may be complaining about the glass ceilings, but they do not take cognizance of the glass ceiling. Why glass ceiling? A barrier that their own ancestors have put in their own country here. So that there is a certain amount of duplicity, hypocrisy involved in that. And the older generation still remember that the caste system has gone as far as the blunt form is concerned. Nobody is putting a earthen clay pot around your neck or broom around your waist. But caste system has now become more sophisticated. It resides in the mindset of people. And it is my submission that in this sophisticated form, caste system is even more pernicious than it was in the blunt form earlier. And that is why these kind of incidents that you mentioned take place. Why this? I will tell you another example. Just few years back, Columbia University, where Dr. Ambedkar got his master's and first PhD. In Columbia University, they wanted to establish a chair in the honor of Dr. Ambedkar. Do you realize, do you know that people were willing to give a lot of money, but not for Dr. Ambedkar chair? You know, their alumni, and that's how the university.
Right.
So there was no dearth of money, but there was one condition: it is not going to be for Ambedkar chair. And still to date, there is no chair on Ambedkar. There is a statue of Dr. Ambedkar there, but mind you, that statue is the bust, not a big statue, and that is there in the basement of a library. It is not in any prominent place. That is because there is a lot of opposition to that. This is...
Dr. Jadhav, may I ask a question to just switch gears?
Of course.
In your CV, it's very impressive to see that you are an eminent Indian economist. And not only that, you are an educationist who has been a vice chancellor of a university in India. Given the entire background and the questions that were asked, what do you see as priorities for the Indian education system or the Indian economy in terms of what the social costs and economic costs of the caste system are, and how do you reduce those costs in the Indian economy?
Well, this is a big question. It will require a 1-hour lecture. Let me only say this, that the first book on the national education policy came out in 2020, as you are aware. The first book on that national education policy, I wrote that first book, and it is available. You can see that. I can show you in a moment. This is the book that I'm talking about, the future of the Indian education system. How relevant is the national education policy? So you'll find many of the answers in this book. Then as far as the economic system, so that's very, very wide. I would urge you to visit I have my own YouTube channel where all my interventions in Rajya Sabha and many of my speeches made here and there, they are all assembled there. There are more than about 400 videos there from 1986 to, that was when I returned to India after getting PhD, right up to last week. So please do take a look at, if you have time and inclination, you will find some of the answers in some of the videos, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful.
All right.
Any other questions for Dr. Zada? This has
I have one.
Stimulating discussion. Go ahead, Rama.
Can I come? Dr. Jadhav, I want to bring the relationship between Baba Sahib Ambedkar and his father and your book and your father and the extension of education. To what extent did Baba Sahib's father's role as a Subedar Major in the Indian Army, the British Indian Army, play in his education vis-a-vis your father's lack of anything of that sort, play a role in your education?
Beautiful question. Wonderful. This is one of the finest questions I've got in the interviews. That is not to compare me with Dr. Ambedkar, because I'm nowhere as compared to what Dr. Ambedkar is. But one is talking about Dr. Ambedkar and his father, me and my father. This is no comparison between me and Dr. Ambedkar. Although some people have talked about it, I tell them hands folded that I'm nothing as in front of Dr. Ambedkar. Okay. Now, first, relationship between Ambedkar and his father. His father was a Subedar Major in the military, but he was the teacher in the military. He had the rank of Subedar Major. Please understand that it was made compulsory by the British that those who are serving the army must send their children to school. Outside, if Dr. Ambedkar was not born in the military cantonment where his father was working, probably he would not have got admission to school. But because his father was there, he was a teacher, and there is a story that his father was watching him like a hawk. Dr. Ambedkar was the 14th child. Only 2 or 3 survived, but he was the 14th child. Most of them died. He was the 14th child and the brilliant one. So his father would make sure they were in a small room, 10 people and a goat. They were in a small 10 by 10 room, staying in what is called Dabakchar in Mumbai. And there, father would stay up all night to let him study. And he would be there taking rest, working during the day and staying late all night to help his son study. And he would pawn, he would give his son any book that he wanted, any book. And money was no concern because he was surviving on pension, but he would borrow money. He would pawn the ornaments of his sister. Father would do that to get some money to buy the book. So he never denied any book to Dr. Ambedkar. So always in favor of education. And when he got his next installment of pension, he would release the ornament and give it back to the sister. Now this is the extreme. This is extreme. Now look at it this way. This is what his father was. Look at me and my father. Do you know that my father, inspired completely by Dr. Ambedkar, decided that the only way the future of the family would be different would be education. That education is the panacea to all the problems. Remember the first slogan that Dr. Ambedkar gave: educate, organize, and agitate. Shika sangatit va ani sangharsha kara. So educate, organize, and agitate. So education came first. Now, my father, who was inspired by Dr. Ambedkar as a foot soldier, he was a foot soldier in the Ambedkar movement. Can you imagine? He goes to the school which he thinks is a very good school. This has come out very well in Marathi, but not come out well in English. Let me tell you this incident. He goes to the school, goes straight away to the headmaster's room and says that I want my child to be admitted here. And the teacher was very kind. So he said that, look, you come in this month. You know, my father did not know the academic cycle, that the school opens in June and finishes in April. So he did not know anything. He only had the burning desire. So the teacher told him that you come on in this particular month, take a form, fill it out, and then from next June, we will consider your child for admission. My father was not willing to listen. My father said, I want my son to be admitted to school and now. And he started weeping. He begged. He begged before him, started weeping, threw before himself before the headmaster. He said, do whatever you like, but I want my son to be admitted in the school. The teacher had never seen anything like that. Finally, my father threatened him. He was crying on one hand. Remember, there is no fallback option. No fallback option for him. He was weeping and yet crying. You know, and he's declared that I'm going to go on fast unto death in your room until you admit my son to the school. And the headmaster, who had never seen anything like that, finally relented. He said, all right, I'll do something. You do one thing. Tomorrow you come back here with your child and bring Sawa Gyara Rupiya. That is 11 rupees and 25 paise. I'm talking about 1948.
Right. Sure.
So my father writes that next day I went to the school. The big teacher called the small teacher. You know, a big teacher took my signature on some papers. My father could sign very well in English because he had worked as a little boy, as an errand boy to the British family. So he could sign. So he signed, and he said that the big teacher told the small teacher to take my son away. So my son was taken away, and I followed them. When I saw my son sitting in the classroom, I knew that the progress of my family has begun. That was the point where my father stopped writing. And that little boy was not me. That little boy was not me. That little boy was my eldest brother who became 1964 batch of IAS, and he retired as the municipal commissioner of Mumbai.
Wow.
This is what my father has done for education, inspired by what Dr. Ambedkar thought about the education.
Great.
Dr. Jadhav, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Jadhav, thank you very much. Such a pleasure to hear you personally. And you've spoken a lot about your father and what your father has done, whereas the book is 50-50 with your mother. I mean, her side of the story, but you've not told us how that part evolved. And because there's a lot of what I would call innate and native intelligence, which comes through from your mother's side, eminently sensible, eminently practical, But where did that part of it come through, and how did you capture that? Because she hasn't written anything from what I can gather.
Yeah, yeah. I look at it this way. See, my father was truly a visionary. My mother was very practical, down to
Grassroots, grounded.
But my mother's contribution lies in sacrificing for the family. So it is my father's vision and my mother's sacrifice. That was the combination that propelled the family upwards. So my mother's contribution, but my mother, frankly speaking, my mother never understood what we have achieved in our lives. Even when we were big shots, she died in my father died in 1989 and she died in 2002. So I was already a big shot. In 2002, I was heading the economics department of the Reserve Bank of India. So all of us had done very well. But my mother never, frankly speaking, she never understood what her children have achieved. She knew that they have done well, but what we have achieved, she had no vision of understanding that. The vision was my father's. And my old grandmothers who came to Mumbai, bringing my father and his sister to Mumbai.
Dr. Jadhav, just to mention, a very good friend of mine, Bharat, is in the audience today. And I would say he's an exception because we all have read Untouchables. He has read Ansabap An Ami.
Okay.
So if Bharat has any question, let me give him an opportunity.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Milind. Namaskar, Dr. Jadhav.
Namaskar,
We had met at a BMM in 2003, I think, after your speech. It's a pleasure. My question is actually simple. I was just going to mention that you had mentioned about your grandmother, that she really knew that you could not stay in the village and then progress. So she and her son, your father, really made the upward mobility possible.
Right. That's the word I had used. Yeah.
Yes. And so the question I had is a little different though. It's very impressive how many editions have sold, etc. See, for us, I mean, clearly being born in a different caste, I can't relate to all yours, but I have seen this, so I can relate to it. So when I read the book, it really spoke to me. How a Korean or French or somebody can relate to this book, and why do you think it has become popular outside India, where they don't understand caste system, they don't understand the struggle, they don't know probably Dr. Ambedkar?
Beautiful question. Another beautiful question. Let me talk about this. Why has the book become popular outside India? It has done well in America, but not greatly. It has done very, very well in French, but it has really done wonders in Korean language. I want to narrate to you one incident that took place in 2007. I was the Vice Chancellor of Pune University, and I was invited to Korea as a state visit, as a state guest. And it was a 6-day program, and they had kept the whole schedule very busy. That was the first time I'd gone to Korea. I was in Seoul, but I'd hardly seen anything about the city. Every day, full day program of interviews, debates, discussion, TV interviews, and so on. I had hardly seen Korea or Seoul, where I was located. On the 6th day, they told me that this slot of 2 hours between 10:30 to 12:30 is open. What would you like to do? So I started laughing. That was going to be my last day in Seoul. So I said, what can I do in these 2 hours? So I said, please take me to a marketplace. I want to just get the feel of the city. You know, I'm moving from one conference to another. That makes no sense. You know, you don't get the feel of the country or the city. So they took me to a marketplace. And there was a lady who accompanied me who could talk in Korean and English, and she was explaining things to me. When we got down from the car and we were walking along, two very senior, even old Koreans came running and started talking to me in rapid fire Korean. So I was completely baffled. So this lady explained to me that they are inviting you to their shop. So I said, look at this marketing. They are doing such aggressive marketing. This is unbelievable. So I told them through the lady, you don't want to buy anything. I'm just here to, look around. So I'm not going to buy anything. They immediately said something and translated, told me, no. They don't want you to buy. They want you.
Dr. Jadhav, we cannot hear you.
Just when you came to a punchline.
It's called delayed gratification. Maybe he'll come back. He'll come back.
Now we have to guess.
Oh, Dr. Jadhav, we couldn't hear you.
You couldn't hear the punchline.
Yes. It was going well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. They said that no, we don't want you to buy anything. Just want you to grace our shop by entering. So put it that way. I said, okay, I'll come there. So I entered the shop and I was looking around and they were taking photographs, etc. I suddenly realized that on the center table, there was a sheaf of papers on which, so I went close by and I saw that my photograph was there. Then I realized that in the earlier 5 days, whatever appeared about me in the newspaper with photograph, etc., those paper cuttings were properly taken and pasted on plain paper and the whole sheaf was there. The first thing that came to my mind is that could this have been orchestrated? And the Indians, one is very suspicious. But then nobody knew that I was going to come there on that day and that early morning. So, but still I could not resist the temptation of asking them. I asked them, why have you kept this? And there I got the answer to your question. They both told me that we want our sons and our grandsons to read your book to understand the relationship between father and sons. So, just imagine a person who lived his life in the central part of Mumbai has a resonance in something happens in the father and child's relationship in South Korea. So what appeals to whom is unbelievable. It's the family values, the system, everything. I mean, it's very difficult. Many people have asked me why this book has become so popular in Korea. I have no answer. But some answer is provided by these kind of stray instances where it becomes clear that it has appealed to them. One reason for popularity of my book in all languages, in all countries, particularly in India and in the East, I would say, not West necessarily. In every family, in every caste, every religion, in every family, there is one person who does disproportionately large contribution and forms the basis of the growth of that family. I think everybody relates to my father, to that person in their family who did the foundation of the growth of that family. I think that is the only reason that comes to my mind.
Very true.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jadhav. I think you have been very patient with all of our questions. As I had mentioned to you, we get into a segment where the reader of the month does an overview of the book, and then 3 or 4 of our friends reflect on different parts of the book and different points of view. So if you'd like to stay and listen to them, then at the end we might have another segment of questions for you. But I think we should transit to that segment if you don't mind.
No, you can start with that segment. I will excuse myself, but before I do that, I would like to thank you for having organized this wonderful get together online, and I'm grateful to all of you for asking very good questions, and I really enjoyed answering those questions and participating in this discussion come debate. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jadhav.
All the very best.
Very
Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you, and I really appreciate your spending the time with us.
Right.
With a lot
would you at some point be able to send me a link of your recording?
Yes,
I can put
absolutely.
that on my
Yes.
own YouTube
Absolutely.
video with your permission.
Yeah, I can send you the slides as well as the recording for your reference.
Beautiful.
Milind, with your indulgence, can I ask Dr. Jadhav a 5-second personal question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Jadhav, I had a good friend, Shubir Gokaran, who's died, and he also had RBI and IMF, like you. And I was wondering whether your paths intersected.
Yeah, twice, in fact. He was not in RBI when I was in RBI. I had left RBI before that. I took voluntary retirement from RBI. And Subir Gokan did, we passed. But much earlier, I had interviewed him for the post of Deputy General Manager of Exim Bank, and I had failed him. But this was long ago. But I want to tell you something in 10 seconds, which may interest you, that this is no big secret. Some people did know and some papers did write about it, so I'm not disclosing anything secret. But in 2017, I missed becoming the President of India by a whisker. I was so close. But what happened was, that was the time when I was hit by cancer, a colon cancer, and I was down in the hospitals and going through the treatment and all that. So it did not happen, and you missed having a person like me as the President of India.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
to see you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. So let me see. If I can...
Excellent.
Kya life hai? Instead of Murmu, he could have been the president today.
Yeah, Murmu. Instead of our existing president, yeah, he would have been there.
Yeah.
Not Murmu.
No, I'm saying whatever.
Ramnath. He was the choice compared to Ramnath.
I didn't know that. Amazing.
He was one of the candidates.
Yeah, but that's he missed by a whisker because he had cancer.
Wow.
No, he mentioned the cancer because my friend Shubir Gokaran also was IMF, ED, and RBI Deputy Governor, died of cancer. That's the context in which he said they both got cancer, and he said like, "मैं बचा वो मर गया," basically. And अगर cancer नहीं होता, I could have become president. That's the context. But amazing.
Okay, can you see the slides? I think we should go ahead with Vinita's overview and then very interesting reflections from different points of view from Sandeep, Rama, as well as Anjali and Srinivas. So let me bring up Vinita's slide. And Vinita, if you want to take over and provide us a quick overview of the book.
Vinita's on mute.
No, I have unmuted myself. Yeah, I shall give my overview. But I think already Dr.
Dr. Jadhav.
Can I speak?
No, I did not.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Vinita. We can hear you.
Okay, so I basically saying that I think whatever, I mean, a lot of what I have to say,
And I really appreciate all the time and answers you provided.
the better overview has been given by Dr.
And I
Narendra.
Milind, you need to go on mute.
Over the next.
Milind?
No,
Okay. Thank you.
I've unmuted myself. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Vinita.
Yeah. So I was saying, I think a better overview of the book has already been given by Dr. Narendra Yadav. However, I will read what I had written. I mean, yes, as all of you already know that I'd selected Dalit writings because I thought that this is a different genre of writing, which I don't think many people have actually delved into. So the book, so a book for reflection, Untouchables by Narendra Yadav, belongs to the genre of Dalit literature. This genre of writing brings to the fore the lived experience of Dalits who had been silenced for centuries and their struggles for social emancipation. Which we've already seen from Dr. Yadav himself, how his father actually struggled to get education for his children, and I mean the incident of the school. This particular quote that I have chosen, according to me, sums up this whole thing in a nutshell, and it's taken from the Manifesto of Dalit History Matters Collective. I am Dalit history, you are Dalit history, and we believe that it's not just his story, but her story and our story that are necessary to set us free. This genre of writing includes writings by both Dalits and non-Dalits. Examples, I mean, the two examples I've taken are very popular ones, but there are a whole lot of others, like even Rohington Mistry and I think Dr. Yadav himself mentioned Mulkraj Anand, who also wrote a book called The Untouchables from his point of view, which is, I mean, how he thought about what the Dalits experience. The two examples I've put down here are Arvind Adiga's White Tiger and Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things. Most of the writings of Dalits are in Indian regional languages, as the English language in India had until recently been exclusive to Brahmin and Savarna writers. Many of them are autobiographical or biographical accounts. Poetry songs are also a very significant part of this genre. They have played an important role in the Dalit movement. The very significant part of the Dalit movement has been through poetry and literature that the Dalits used. So, which of course we've also, I think, in a way, Dr. Yadav himself mentioned this too. Most of these writings have recently been translated into English, creating a wider readership and more awareness of the extreme discrimination faced by them. Coming to the book itself, Dr. Narendra Yadav's Untouchables is a story of the awakening of Dalits. It is a story of one Dalit untouchable family's struggle inspired by Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar's call to Dalits to educate, unite, and agitate. Dr. Ambedkar touched the lives of millions of Dalits who walked the talk, and Damodar Runaji Yadav was just one of them. Damu was an ordinary man who did an extraordinary thing. He stood up against the oppression of the caste system by teaching his children to believe in themselves and reclaim their human dignity. It is a heart-wrenching account told by Dr. Narendra's parents, Damu and Sonu's point of view. This book, while showing the grit and determination of Damu, also brings out the struggle of Sonu, who has to negotiate with double discrimination of being a Dalit and a woman. Of course, the interesting question which was asked about his wife, he says that her contribution was her sacrifice. I mean, yes, I think there is something about this bias which does come out in the book. Of course, in his conversation, it didn't come out, but it is very clearly coming out where he talks about his mother. I think Anjali may talk about this, and I hope she does. Her son expresses this with extreme sensitivity in the book. It's written about it, but he hasn't realized, even though I think he was writing about it, what contribution she actually did make, though he was sensitive about her in the book. I think, I mean, especially where she is talking also about when he wants the family to convert to Buddhism, she does put up a resistance. And that's the time which also brings out, how the education, the need for education was so important to Ambedkar, and also to Damu himself. And Damu has constantly asked her to keep reading, try to read and educate herself. And it kind of brings out over there her emancipation, where she's able to stand up for the first time, I think, to Damu. Her son expresses this with extreme sensitivity in the book. He then expresses the continuing struggle of Dalits through his own experiences, and finally concludes the book with an account of his daughter's life in her own words, in which she writes, "My ancestors worked hard to make my life like that of any other girl in the world. I have the torch they have lit for me, and nothing can stop me now." And that we have seen from what Dr. Jadhav himself has said, that she's doing so well today. So education, I would say, is the book, and Dr. Jadhav himself brings out, has been, as Dr. Ambedkar himself felt, which he, again, Dr. Jadhav mentioned that, and it is written in the book, was the influence of Mahatma Phule on Ambedkar himself, which has been acknowledged very greatly. Mahatma Phule was the first one actually who insisted on education, and he also educated his own wife. And it is in her name that the University Mahatma Phule, Savitribai Phule University in Pune, where Dr. Yadav was the vice chancellor. I'll end with that, and looking forward to hearing everybody's reflections on the book.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vinita. And this was one of the finest genres that you could have picked, as the discussion with Dr. Jadhav also indicated. So I'm glad we got to discuss this book. And now let's go to one of our fire-eating heroes, Rama. And he's going to bring out Damu's point of view. So Damu's point of view.
All right, Rama.
Rama will reflect on.
Are you going to start off with demonstrating this, Rama, on this call?
Let's not divert from the core thing, because Dr. Jadhav set such a brilliant stage that it will be very difficult for anybody to follow. But what I'd like to do is to first say, in terms of reflection, I won't read everything because they read it, but I'll try to capture some of the critical parts of Damu. First, I find the metaphor of him being a superhero extremely apt, when I look at it. And I deconstruct that in terms of the context, his tenacity, the heroism, his vision, and then bring it together as a conclusion from my perspective. Yeah, we can have the next slide, please. Milan?
Yeah.
Can I have the next slide?
Yeah.
Very frankly, this is one of the best books I've read ever. Not just because of the way he wrote it, but in the context of what he wrote it. And what I think he has done very well, and as Dr. Jadhav explained, it was the writings of his father, is basically starting with a punch about how huge the impact is. And while I guess I've read a little and realized it, nothing came home rather than the phrase that, every sixth Indian is an untouchable. And then going back to Nidhi's very perspicacious question, if you start layering on that the OBCs and the women who are discriminated against, it's a pretty good challenge that is out there. And in fact, it goes back to something that was sent by an Indian Muslim friend to me very recently, who said that the life of a cow is even more powerful and important than the life of a human being as a Muslim. If I can go to the next slide, please. for me, as this discussion of Damu goes, his tenacity was, and now we know it was his eldest son. You know, he was very clear of what he wanted. And that's what I found very impressive about him. It was not education that created the want, but the tenacity that this want is necessary for the advancement of his family. Now, he never lost his street smarts. And I see that also as an entrepreneur when I go to the gatekeepers or VCs, and some of them were absolute idiots. But I always wonder, where do I have the arthanas to basically get past those guys? And he was very clear. He knew he would, until he got to the headmaster, he could not do it. But it was that street smarts with this that I found very impressive about Damu. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Mm-hmm.
And then his heroism that comes together. You know, just look back in 1930s when this guy, the local revenue official, comes and somebody says, pick up this corpse out of the water. And he knows that he cannot touch a higher caste woman. And he gets whipped, but he still goes on with it. And then he decides that he'll leave his village and leave everything behind. And going back to his wife, she has to follow him. But it was that heroism to break off from his chains, which I thought was magnificent. Right, go to the next slide, please. And then I look at the vision that he had. I think, sorry, you've gone a little too fast. The vision that he had was basically that education liberates. I like his 3-word comment that he made from Babasaheb Ambedkar. But what I found, I did some reading about B.R. Ambedkar also, because I saw that that was central to his decision to convert. And I was curious on why that was happening. And then the explanation about his being a Subedar major in the education society, in the military school, is staggering. And in a way, it kind of encompasses what Damu was doing. I don't know whether Damu knew about Ambedkar's father or not. That was a question I wanted to ask, but could not. But what I found most impressive, and something that I read in a different way sometime before, is what he tells his wife, that it takes both rain and sun to make a rainbow. So let me stop on this positive note and just go for a conclusion, which is basically saying that the Mahar regiment is one of the most storied regiments in India. And it has been led by Brahmin officers. So maybe what we are talking about in terms of the integration of caste has been exemplified by the Indian Army, and it's now, of course, going down a different path. But what I hope is that we are able to treat Dalits as humans and not as Manu's law suggested, and at least at a very minimum, as the Constitution entreats us to treat him. And I'm so glad that whoever put Dr. Ambedkar to lead the Constituent Assembly and build the Constitution chose him as one of the underprivileged to build that whole structure together. I think that to me is the strong message that resonates from this whole process. Thank you for your time. And I think I've covered this in about 3.5 minutes.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you, Rama.
Excellent.
That was a very good beginning to the
Very
reflection.
Very nice.
And now we go to Sandeep to talk about how Dr. Jadhav and his family came out of bondage and started their journey towards freedom. Go ahead, Sandeep.
So Damu's triumphant journey to freedom, I have broken it up into 6 parts. The background, Mumbai beckons, Gora Sahib takes Damu home, the formative years, breaking the chains, and key reflections. Damu Mahar hailed from Ozar, a village near Nasik. They lived happily, celebrating weddings and festivals and worshipping goddess Mariai. Episodes of mistreatment by upper castes had been etched in on Damu's mind as a child. Early loss of his father set a series of events that transformed Damu's life. Mumbai beckons. At 12, Damu had to relocate to Mumbai with his widowed mother and sister Najukta. Doing odd jobs, Mumbai's rough and tumble molded Damu into a street-smart teenager. Selling newspapers, Damu befriended a Gora Sahib who took a liking to Damu. Next. One day, Gora Sahib took Damu home and introduced him to his daughter, Missy Baba. In time, Gora Sahib started showering Damu with shoes, clothes, and goodies that ordinarily Damu would have been deprived. Damu started running lucrative outstation errands for Gora Sahib, besides giving company to Missy Baba. Growing familiar with English, Damu grew into a tall, confident, street smart, and determined personality. The formative years. 1st November 1924, Damu joined the Great Indian Peninsula Railway as a regular employee. His initiative and presence of mind earned him quick promotions. He got married to Sonu. Educate, unite, and agitate. Damu joined Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar's social movement and clarion call. Sonu and Najukta actively participated with Damu. Damu lost his job during a union strike in 1929 and fell upon bad days. With no alternative livelihood, he conceded to his mother's pressure and accepted the role of Yesker as part of the community's duty in Ozar. A bitter incident brought Damu head-on with the upper castes, whose ill treatment riled Damu. Overnight, Damu fled Ozar with Sonu in tow to return to Mumbai. The long march crossed Baba Sahib's agitation in Nasik. This forever changed the future course of Damu and Sonu's life. The key reflections are enabling circumstances that became key for Damu to escape the rigid caste system are apprenticeship with Hari Mama that molded Damu as a child, relocation to Mumbai, thereby escaping the oppressive social customs of Ozar, economic freedom that developed Damu's personality and confidence, broad-minded view and an egalitarian exposure developed with Gora Sahib, willingness to take big risks, stand up and agitate for self-respect as taught by Baba Sahib, and unstinted support from Sonu in his struggle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. That was a very, very good reflection on the first half of the book. And now we can look at Sonu's point of view in Anjali's words. Go ahead, Anjali.
So thank you very much. The book Untouchables was one I could not stop reading. I finished it in one swift session and then I read it again. And it wasn't because I thought it was very well written, because I didn't think it was well written in the beginning. It was more because the story itself was gripping, which is, I think, what all of you have said in the discussion. And when I read the book again, I realized that there was a story within a story. The story of the Dalits and the story of women. And 3 points struck me. The most important was that the stories we hear build a worldview, and then we don't question those. The story of Eklavya and the dramatically different interpretation of the story by Dr. Jadhav in his book set the book stone for me. He says, for me, the moral of the fable is simply that power will remain the guarded possession of the highborn, striving to ensure that an outcast remains a lowly outcast. Paralyzed by the system, the outcast will never dare to question it. Eklavya was cornered into sacrificing his strength, and as consolation, his devotion was glorified, and his silent consent transformed into a myth that promotes submission among the disempowered. And this really struck me, because I think there are many such myths that we embrace and which form our mindset. The second is the persistence of the caste system, which Dr. Jadhav said, the examples given, the matrimonial ads, the subconscious assessment made by Indians, which he even mentioned now, some of the examples that came out in the discussion. This conscious questioning that Indians have, what's your name, where do you come from, which part, until we can identify the caste of that person. These hit home. Yet the way that the Jadhav family escaped this, the story itself, illustrates that some have been able to escape this age-old net. It may take a generation to escape poverty, but does it take 3 generations to escape the mindset? Finally, the role of education, which everybody has spoken about. So Jyotiba Phule in the 1870s began his campaign to educate the traditionally disenfranchised. And what I found interesting was that Dr. Jadhav says that the literacy rate among Dalits have been improving faster than those among non-Dalits. But the story of Sonu brings these 3 elements together. There's the glorification of the self-sacrificing mother, which we've all talked about. And there's a sentence which really struck me. Sonu, my mother, who killed her hunger to keep us alive. She's self-sacrificing, but why glorify this? The role of women. And there's so many examples. I won't read them all out. But he shouted at Sonu to shut up. This was a matter between men. And then Sonu did not make a sound of protest or even ask him where they were going. She got married when she was only 10. She felt like cattle in the bazaar being inspected for defects. The mother trained Sonu. We have the curse of being born female, and so on and so forth. Then look at her expectations. The taunts on being childless, and then she says the meager expectations. He never drank, never abused me. Best of all, he never raised his hand to me. Then the whole thing about the color of the skin. I remember that in the 4 days I stayed with my husband's family, my fair color and good looks were brought up time and time again. And she was jealous of that Missy side. This still persists. I mean, we wrote a case on this, and the Japanese are still about whites and so on. Then she even says about her husband, look at her own bias. He was dark, no doubt, but he was a good man. But when finally, the most powerful was the chapter where there's understanding and realization. No, it was not a question of a few months. It was a question of his identity, our identity. She finally gets it. Then she started a business. Sonu started a business. She's selling vegetables, bringing in 8 to 10 rupees a day. She objected to converting to Buddhism. Over the years, he had become used to the Sonu he had married, docile and shy, the Sonu who would hesitate to raise her downcast eyes and look him in the eye. But he had taught me to think for myself. And now I had found the nerve to voice my thoughts. I thought that was powerful. And then there's the final realization of self. An incredible lightness descended on me. I felt wonderful after letting go of all that I had held on a tight leash. The lines had been drawn, and I had created an identity by making myself heard. Not that it changed my reality. My life was still tied to my man. And then, of course, the powerful outside view of the granddaughter. My father works in places such as the IMF and makes decisions that shape nations, yet comes home to a mother who doesn't know where America is. The line about the ancestors working hard to make her life just what it is. Just, make my ancestors worked hard to make my life just like that of any other girl in the world and carrying the torch forward. But what strikes me is that Dr. Jadhav himself is proud of his daughter. But is the myth of the self-sacrificing woman, some of these myths, just like the Eklavya story, has he internalized those?
Thank you, Anjali. Very, very powerful perspective on Soni's point of view. And now we have Srinivas to talk about and reflect on the second half of the book, when the struggle began for Damu and Sonu and the second generation thereafter until the epilogue. Now, as we speak, Srinivas is on his way to Hyderabad. So he's 30,000 feet up in the air, but we can still hear his voice. So let me see if I can make that happen.
The final section of the book talks about the struggle that Jadhav family has gone through and the epilogue on the directions that it takes. So it moves the journey of untouchables from the eyes of Jadhav family. So it completes the entire discrimination issue prevailed over the centuries. Does it? Jadhav can be better understood if we walk through the entire journey over the different people. Jadhav 1 is not one single person. He represents the untouchable community for over 2000 years. Relegated to the fringes of society with strict controls on what is allowed, he has accepted his position in the society, either due to the sheer ignorance or acceptance to the fate. He believed that he is destined for that existence. He did survive for a very long time across millennia. Winds of change have begun with messiahs started appearing in the form of Jyotirao Phule, Narayan Guru, who really questioned the status quo that has been accepted for ages. Suddenly, Jadhav self-awareness as a normal human being started taking roots. Jadhav 3 belongs to the generation when force is unleashed. Strong leaders like Ambedkar, Ramaswamy Naika, Jogendra Mandal across the country provided right leadership to his ilk to fight for their rights. Suddenly their identity got defined as an individual and Jadhav started demanding the right place in the society. By the time Jadhav 4 came to existence, India attained its independence and independent India accepted the injustice done to the Dalit community and started experimenting through constitutional measures, reservations, etc. This enabled Jadhav 4 to be a part of the new society and realize full potential. But still he carried the social wounds of centuries. Today we have been listening to Dr. Narendra Jadhav. We have read his book and today we are fortunate to have him with us. He is a shining example of what transformation can do. Along with his brilliance, he connects strongly with the struggles Jadhav 3 and before endured. As a rightful representative of the community, Dr. Jadhav articulates the issues and carries the thought leadership of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Jadhav 5 belongs to the present generation. But the questions remain. Is she part of the creamy layer or representative of new identity of Dalit? She is not bothered about the social branding. She is confident of herself and tries to lead life like fellow Indians. Is it that simple or undercurrents still exist? Untouchable book concludes in trying to define what will be the role of Jadhav 5 and how the social wounds can be completely healed as India marches ahead in the new millennium. After going through the book and listening to various thoughts, I have a few observations I wanted to table. The first one is, have we really eliminated the caste system or we only succeeded in reorganizing to present people better? It is a fact that while India progressed considerably post-British Raj, caste lines are still firmly drawn in many walks of the life and it looks like very difficult to obliterate. Untimely death of Ambedkar immediately after his conversion to Buddhism meant 99% of Dalits didn't have the leadership of Dr. Ambedkar's caliber and remained in Hindu fold, requiring a new age Manuvad to replace the Hindu thought. The second observation, which is perhaps a tad personal, is while Brahmin word became a negative B word in the society at large, are we simplifying the malice? Brahmins constitute about 5% of population, even less in South. So scholars need to understand how that tiny, powerless middle class could influence 70% plus of other communities to inflict atrocities on untouchables for 2000 plus years. Other than branding Brahminism and Manuvad, we have very little understanding of psychographics that made such a thing to happen. Isn't it time to move away from the rhetoric and address the issue openly on who is the beneficiary and who is not given the benefit? So what caste is got an implication that needs to be understood. Thank you.
I think thanks to Srinivas, we end on a very thought-provoking question that he comes up by way of his observations. So maybe that's where we can start our open discussion and spend the remaining time, as long as we can go, to jointly reflect on everything we've heard in this really delightful session today. Anyone want to react to Srinivas's last point?
Well, I'll rush in, fools rushing in. But I think that's a really valid point. To blame it all on Brahmins or some small group is not at all understanding the context of the problem in India. And you know, why that's why I want to understand more, and I kept trying to understand, though Dr. Jadhav shut me down on, you know, how is it that Hinduism has survived? There is more to this story than simply talking about, you know, Brahmins, untouchables, one group subjugating another. How did it happen? I don't have the answers, but those are the questions that I would love to hear more on.
I think it's simply the acceptance of what you're born into.
It's
you know?
not acceptance. I don't think it's acceptance, Raja. You think it's just
No, I understand what you're saying, but I think, you know, people don't, you know, go on the path of questioning because, you know, it's not something that's easy to do or people know how to do. But people like Ambedkar are the ones who ended up bringing that out, and I think it's a challenge for people to, you know, pursue that path. But just finally, when he was breaking into it, you know, he passed away, and that's unfortunate. I have a feeling that many more would have.
Yeah, but why didn't Ambedkar, or I mean, there were people like Phule and others who happened periodically through the ages, but why did it continue for 2000 years? There must have been something that people were benefiting from in some way to buy into this idea of such a religion.
I think it's blind acceptance.
I think he said it himself.
It's blind acceptance. Yeah.
It can't be blind acceptance for 2000 years, right?
Hinduism, can I just say something? Hinduism is a Brahminical religion. And because it is Brahminical, when Hinduism itself was formed, any religion, if you see, it is going to be justified by those in power. And they justified it. And as Dr. Jadhav himself was saying, the whole question of the karma system has kept the untouchables till education made them realize that karma is, I mean, simply there. And if you see even what Marx says, Marx himself has said religion is the opium of the masses. So the Brahminical religion itself was done in such a way in which they maintained power, and the lower caste people were those who were controlled by the upper caste through
I feel
doctrine
but somehow, you know, why did
let Pustita say what she wants. Go ahead.
Monty wants to say
I
something.
feel any religion exists because inherently there is fear. Religion is never comes out of love. It comes out of fear, and whoever is in power influences that fear on others. So Hinduism just, I think you don't go away from it, because of the fear that if I go away from it, what could happen? So I might as well just stay with it.
Yeah, I think, Monty, you've hit the nail on the head. I think, the desire to be part of a group, whether advantaged or disadvantaged, may be so strong among humans that people are willing to put up with it. It's another way of, what you said, that you don't move away because of fear.
No, but
So in
Nidhi,
that case, can you blame everything on
hang
perpetrators,
on.
or do the victims also have some role to play in all
No.
of this?
Nidhi, if I can interrupt, taking off from what both you and Yang said towards the end, what's going through my mind is Gandhi was not a Brahmin. Yeah? And when I was trying to probe Dr. Jadhav, okay, he said, look, I was trying to write a book, but it's such a hot potato. Basically, I'm using my words, not his, that he dropped the book. So was it about power? Because in the last century, it was one Indian who could have influenced this rather than propagated it. It was Gandhi. I would love to get a deeper Dalit perspective on why his Ram Rajya, etc., basically said that this is a good system when he knew it was not. When he was a crafty politician as well. So, but I have never understood the dynamics between Dalits and Gandhi. He started using words like Harijan, etc. And perhaps at some stage, I don't know whether it's through Jadhav, Dr. Jadhav, or anybody else, he's going to get this recording. So Dr. Jadhav, when you get this recording, see if you can react to this in private. But it would be very interesting to figure out why Gandhi did nothing. He was not a Brahmin. He had a tight hold over Indian polity. Okay, and but he did nothing for this. I'm trying to figure out why.
Sean, just
No,
on
he
the
did
record.
nothing because the upper caste told him very clearly, it's not your area. Just stay out of it.
Yeah.
No,
Sean,
no.
for the-
That's
Sean, for
what
the record.
Gandhi.
The Lahore thing was cancelled because of the upper caste saying.
I want to interject here. I think that I did not like to contradict Dr. Jadhav or any of you, but I think you all have a misunderstanding of the caste. If you go to the actual Gita, it says that there is no such thing. This fourfold division is based upon the texture of the inner thoughts and the nature of outer actions. It is evident, therefore, that none belongs to a given caste just because of the accident of his birth. The entire Puranas, Vyasa has filled with such examples of the lowborn rising to saintly heights. Vyasa himself is an example. And also the highest born, behaving like Ravan. Ravan was a Brahmin. Ravan himself was the son of a Brahmin, and he behaved in a very difficult way. So I think some of the arguments that we are having here are based on a misinterpretation and a social structure which has been imposed on Hinduism to confuse Hinduism and conflate it with a misunderstanding of the caste system. The caste system is a social structure which has been established.
I completely agree with
The
you.
caste system
Anjali,
is a social structure established to dominate others.
That was
And
the
it
whole
is
intent.
not the religion.
That was the intent.
But basically, religion was, Hinduism was never a religion.
That was the intent. The intent of the system was to basically dominate people through a story. Essentially, what Nidhi is saying, why did Hinduism survive? It's a compelling story born out of fear, born out of a very nice story, and that's what basically management consultants do when they basically write all these PowerPoint decks. It's a story to convince people, and that's what they did for hundreds of years. Anyway, one thought I had is, this whole reservation system, which I think Chacha brought up. I don't think there was any discussion on that, and I think has it helped? Has it hindered?
Yes, I think it has helped. I think it has helped expand. And I think if you look at the difference between the blacks in America and the impoverished or the poorer classes here, the very fact that there are reservations for women and reservations for the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and for the Dalits has created a more equal society. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it, because for generations, if people have been handicapped, then you need to have this. Why did it take 3 generations for his granddaughter, for Damu's daughter, to reach where she did? It took 3 generations. And if there had been more reservations, this would not have happened. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think that we do not.
I think it's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea, and I agree with Anjali. I think they've helped a lot. I think reservations.
I totally agree with Anjali.
I will say that one of the reasons why women have been given board memberships in India is because there are reservations.
And
I think it's a very
informally
good
so
idea.
in the US also. Informally,
Yes,
so
but-
in the US. So no,
But,
reservations
Nidhi,
are a, yeah.
Good idea. And Nidhi, why should there not be 50% reservations for women on
Exactly,
boards?
exactly.
Why
I
should it be
agree
only one or
completely.
two? So as
Yeah.
a woman, I would think that reservations are a good idea. As a
Yes.
Dalit or as a scheduled caste,
Yeah.
I think that reservations are a good idea. And, then there's the argument that, oh my God, are we then promoting people who are not good? Are we coming in the way of merit? And I don't think that that is the truth. I think that there are such handicaps that people suffer against.
Not only that, merit becomes a very subjective matter at some point.
And
For a board member, what is merit? Is having a degree as a CPA more meritorious than contributing a certain life perspective and life experience? Yeah, for a CPA, but not for a board member. So, merit becomes highly subjective as well.
Also,
And
you
it presumes
can only
that-
achieve merit sometimes by getting that basic education.
That's
if you
right.
don't have it.
In fact, that used to be the old trope that, oh, we can't promote you because you don't have exposure to this, that, and the other, and you don't have exposure to this, that, and the other because you were never put in that position.
Correct.
I mean, even from our days in IMC, Lever wouldn't hire women because it was a sales job and you had to go to the villages. Nobody ever asked a woman if she was willing to go to the villages. Somebody made a decision. And then if you didn't do well in the sales hierarchy, you weren't going to make it to CEO. So it's all bogus.
And there's a presumption,
question.
that all the positions occupied on those boards by males are all meritorious to begin with. And that's not the case. Right? So,
Just a quick question. Hello.
I
have a quick
reality, Nidhi, just to respond to your point, that about 5 years after we graduated, Hindustan Lever started recruiting women into the sales function. And that happened late in life, but it did happen later.
No, that's why society as a whole is moving in the right direction. But I remember, who was it? Richardson Hindustan, the Wicks people. Oh, we can't hire women because we don't have a women's bathroom. I mean, what kind of excuse is that? Or, so society is moving in the right direction. Yeah, it sounds outrageous now, 40 years later, but these were all, true things when we were in college.
You see this written by, even people like the Pepsi CEO who graduated from IMC. And he talks about that kind of discrimination even among American multinationals.
Of course.
It's a universal phenomenon.
Just a
The
quick
world is moving in the right direction, but agitation is definitely
the question. If reservations are such a good thing, should we then you have a proportionate share? In other words, when Nidhi, you mentioned that 60% of the population of India are backward castes or whatever, then should we have 60% reservation, right?
Well,
that's only
see,
fair.
The thing is that there's a constitutional requirement that reservations are not to exceed 50%, right? So unless you alter the constitution, you can't do that.
No, then you get to the states.
But I think
you can willfully exceed that. You just get it through the states. I mean, if you are an upper caste kid and you want to go to med school anywhere in India, forget it. Unless you are in the top 0.0. If you're an upper caste kid, yeah.
If you are an Indian male in the US and you want to go to med school, you can also half forget it, because Indian males in the US are an overrepresented minority in the medical profession.
In general,
So
Asian Americans. Yeah.
So it works everywhere.
To your point about the reservation, Ambedkar actually was against any kind of reservation. That's what I've read.
Absolutely, yes.
I thought it was supposed to last X number of years. It was supposed to be.
Ambedkar was against any kind of reservation.
He kept affirmative action for a limited number of years.
For
What has happened is, just like any such of these things, people are abusing it. It should be based on income as well. Do you think that Jadav's daughter deserves a seat based on reservation? Not at all.
No, she does. She does deserve a seat based on reservation, because what you are is a composite of so many things, not just your immediate parents. It's the relatives you have, the exposure to life that you've had. I think Jadav's daughter deserves a reservation. I don't know if her daughter deserves a reservation, but I think given the family background, I think Jadhav's daughter deserves it.
You know, this idea of reservations and the constitution is pretty recent in evolution. But I was just thinking about where did Hinduism come to India from? And if you go back to Ashok's time, you see that Buddhism was really widespread in India. You see all these Ashok pillars all over the country even today. And as a survival tactic, Hindus had to fight back against Buddhism, which we call a period of revival of Hinduism. So it's not a given that Hinduism is wedded to India in that sense, right from ancient times. It is the case that even though we think these are very pacifist religions, they have had to fight with each other for dominance. So if there was no revival of Hinduism, we might all have been in a Buddhist country today. So that also gives me pause.
Good point. Very good point.
Thanks to Shankaracharya. Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Shankara, Madhava, and Ramanuja were the three people who built the pillars of modern Hinduism.
Yeah.
But if they had not done that work, Buddhism would have prevailed.
Okay, I think now we are trying to solve world hunger. So maybe this is a good time to come to a close.
So very, very, very good discussion. Thank you to all the reflectors. And
Thank you all.
Vinita.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vinita,
Thank you all.
especially for this choice of book. Vinita gets.
And I
kudos for
think
that.
Fabulous.
this was
But I
Vinita,
would
thank you.
suggest that
And
all of you read. I would in fact suggest that all of you read Annihilation of Caste.
Yeah.
It's very
In
good.
fact,
What?
if you remember, when
What is the
Not
book?
big, it's a very small, it's very small. You can read it in a, I mean, it won't take time, but where, I mean, it explains.
Can you repeat the name of the book?
Ambedkar's book. Ambedkar's book, Annihilation of Caste. Vinita, can you suggest?
I have a soft copy. I'll share it. Annihilation of Caste.
It was actually his speech, which was prepared for the High Caste Committee, and it was refused because they wanted Ambedkar to make certain changes, which he refused to do. And then he actually got it published and distributed it himself.
Yeah.
One thing, Vanita, I would love a recommendation from you is either Dalit writing or writing about Dalits and such like, which are not always angry. I mean, I understand the anger completely, but if there is anything written either by a Dalit or a non-Dalit, which analyzes the situation and the history without so much anger, that would be great, if you know of any such books.
Look
I
at
understand the
Perumal
anger.
Murugan. Yeah.
Huh?
Perumal Murugan in Tamil.
Could you please? In Tamil, I
yeah,
won't be able to read
No,
it.
there are
I mean, it's
translations
been
of his
translated.
book also.
It's been
There are
translated.
translations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he wrote about I'll
Could you
send you
please
a link.
post that? Could you please post that?
It's a
on the blog?
fabulous book. Please post it.
Yes.
I'll read it again.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
This was
everyone. Milind, thank you for getting Dr. Jadhav. I think it was one of our best author interactions. He made it personal, he was passionate, he was argumentative, and I'm glad he stayed for as long as he did, and thank you for getting him.
You're welcome.
Yes,
And let's thank Yanks in his absence.
Yes, Yanks did a great job too.
Very good. Very good one, Milind.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye,
Everybody
everyone.
did an excellent job. Thank you. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.